All right, I think we can start. Yes, you counted. All right, so look, since we're being well timed, there's no time for introductions rather than me saying, hey, I'm doing the talking, and I do the talking in this space for already almost 11 years, and he's in the space of IT in general for 15. And he's going to actually deliver the application from scratch, and I'll be sort of your director's hat. I'll be commenting on what is happening in the background. Before we start, just a short introduction. Like in IT space, between 40 and 50% of projects are delayed. So this is the reality. This is the statistic I found. Some people could argue maybe there's more. And if you look on how much does it cost, for over 50% of those delayed projects, they cost almost 190% or more. So this is the reality that we live in, that we have to solve, that we have to face. But what if you could deliver within days instead of months or years? This session will not solve all of your problems, will not solve communication issues, will not be talking about project management. However, we want to show you what can you achieve with the right tools. And what we are going to be doing today is fully functional application that will consist of the following elements. We will have a business logic, which is the workflow or process, however you want to call it. We'll have a data input, so we'll have a form for users to interact with. We'll have a data output, so we'll produce some reports. We'll do conditions, we'll do simple but effective data source, some actions. We'll also show you how we deal with mobile apps. And the last but not least, if some of you are developers, you might appreciate the fact that we also deliver documentation right away. So, what's the scenario? From the business perspective, imagine somebody tell me, look, we have this process for approving gifts. We are a highly regulated company. Every employee that receives a gift from a vendor or from outside company needs to register it. Right now, everything is happening via email. We don't know who to send it to, and so on and so forth. We are tired of doing things inefficiently. It's a pain in the butt, right? So gifts need to be registered. They need to be approved by the manager of a specific person. We require certain data to be entered, like what is the gift, what is the approximate value of it. We need some insights onto how many gifts our employees are receiving, and also we need some basic email notifications about things that need to be done. So this is our scenario from the business perspective. And is it too good to be true to do all of that in 50 minutes? Well, let's find out. So with that said, Mark will switch to the Designer Studio. This is the application where all of the magic happens. And this is where we will be staying for the majority of the session because we'll be focusing on creating the application. So first thing we need to do is to create a new definition of an application. So Mark is doing it right away. Let's give it some name, like new gift request application. If there are typos, we can live with that, Mark. I think, that's how you see nothing is pre-recorded as well. And you have several parameters that will basically allow us to identify and find that application later on, like what's the name, what's the acronym, and so on and so forth. And the last thing you will see is that by default, Mark will be the business administrator, so basically the owner of that application with privileges to modify it freely. So, a new application is being created. That's what the definition of it. We haven't created anything yet. The first thing I want to focus is the process, right? So what needs to happen step by step so we could achieve the business goal for this application. So we use drag and drop design with those blocks, and those blocks basically answer the question, what is the status of my particular case, right? So first thing we need to have is a space for people to actually register a new gift. So let's call this registration. And then, as we discussed, we want the manager of a specific person to be able to approve such gift that is registered. So let's call this manager approval. And then there are two possible outcomes. Positive, they say yes, or negative, they say no. So we'll create steps for that as well. And this will be the end of our process, right? So if something is approved, later on we'll say it is approved. We can view it at any point of time, or decline if manager is not in the mood. All right, and now what we need to do is to connect those steps together, right? So basically we need to define how users should progress throughout this application. So the first thing is that from registration we should be able to move to manager approval. Mark has already created submit path, and the path that you see here is going to be visualized as a button that user has to click to go somewhere, right? And in a very similar fashion, Mark will create two paths, one for approval and the other one for rejection. There's one space here if you don't want to stand. All right. And one thing that we need to define is who is the manager, right? If you are using Active Directory and you have your organizational structure in Active Directory, we can leverage that out of the box, right? So we'll always ask Active Directory who is the manager of that person. If we know, assign a task to the person. So we go to the task creation for the path of registering the gift, and as you can see, we call it assign to superior. And also for presentation purposes, Mark will assign it to himself because we don't want to switch between users, especially that we are timed very, very strictly. Okay, so the task will be assigned to two people, including Mark, so he could test it. And we are 3 minutes into the application creation. We already have the core of the business logic. And the great thing is that we can already test it. It's not much, it's rudimentary, but you can already see how it's going to work. So Mark has started a new process for gift registration. You can see the submit path. So this is the button that we need to click. Sorry. And on the right-hand side, you can see all of the steps. So registration, manager approval, approved, and declined. So we can see what is the status of a given case. Let's see what happens if we click submit. We go forward, and the status has changed to manager approval. We don't have much data yet. We'll cover that very, very soon. But you can see already we have a comment section. We have attachment section, so you can attach any file, like if you received a nice CD, you can take a picture of it and attach it here out of the box. So we already know that the business logic is in place. Maybe let's approve this one to show you that at the end of the road, this case gets approved, and in a similar fashion, it will get to the status rejected if you click reject. So now let's tackle the form, right? Because we need some data to describe what the hell is going on with whatever we are doing. So we go to form fields, and I would like to see the following information. What is the gift, right? What it is. So gift name or something of that sort. We'll keep it a single line of text. Let's make another one with a description. So if there are any specific circumstances of how you received it, we could define it there. let's go for another one with the value. Is it possible that we keep the doors open because it's or is it just me? I don't know. All right, and I would like to see two more information, like what is the registration date, and the other one, what is the who registered it, right? Just so to make manager's life easier, open the form, I see all of the data, I can quickly make a decision. All right, so we have the date field and the person field. And now the only thing we need to do is to define how those fields should behave in our process, right? For the first, for starters, this instance ID and business entity, these are technical information, so we can get rid of them. And then, for now, for testing purposes, we can make everything visible, all of those fields that we've created. And here, basically, all of those fields are here. And then we define how they should behave in registration, in manager approval, in any other step. And we can make them visible and editable, read-only, or required by simply ticking those checkboxes. So now let's test it again, and let's see how does the application look like now. So now, as you can see, we have a gift name, description, value, registration date, registered by. And what we are doing right now is sort of a rapid prototyping, right? So now I see how does it look, so I can critique myself. So let's say, Mark, I want registration date and registered by to be on the top, because that's my preference here. And to do that, we have our form designer, and it has 4 sections. Top on the full width of the screen, left column, right column, and the bottom one, and you just drag and drop the fields, and the system takes care of all of the placements and adjustments on the form. And now we can instantly see how it affected our form. So now we have those registered by and registration date on the top. By the way, we're going gradually into more advanced things, but we need to cover the basics first, okay? So now let's fill out this form, and let's see how does it work. So Mark provides any information about the user, about the registration date, and a gift name. What did you receive, Mark? Like a smartwatch or?
So we won our laptop yesterday. Up to you. Let's be positive.
Okay, description. Fancy gaming laptop. Value 1999, like in US commercials. So let's submit. And now we move to the manage approval, right? And what do we see? Okay, we have the data, but I still, as a manager now, I can still edit it. Should I be able to do that? Not really, right? So let's go back to the designer and go to the field matrix. And for the manager approval step, let's make all of those fields read-only, because the manager shouldn't be able to change anything that we registered, right? So let's say, and then this is a sort of party trick for geeks, but all of the changes that we do, they are instantaneous, right? So the only thing that Mark has to do to have those changes in effect is to refresh. And now you can see that the form is not editable anymore. This is not something that other systems will have. This is a unique feature that Webcon has. All right, and now we can critique further, right? Okay, as a manager, I see, all right, I have the data, but I would like to have a space to voice my opinion, right? So I would like to have a field just for me as a manager and other managers. Let's call this additional opinion. So we could say, oh yeah, I approve, this looks okay, or state a reason for rejection. So we call it additional opinion. Let's make it multiple lines of text. And now I want to have it on the right side of the form. We will be doing that, so don't spoil my presentation. But yes, we'll be playing with that further. Let's just let's just save it. Do we have it visible already? Yeah, so let's make it, just for the manager. In the registration, we don't need to see that field, right? Because as a person registering, give them to the manager. All right, so save, hit back, refresh, and you will see that the new field has appeared on the form. So this is how quickly we can progress with making this application more and more advanced. So let's say, okay, we approve this fancy gaming laptop, and then we moved to the approved stage. All right, Mark, if you could start the new case once more. Because now I'm thinking, okay, we technically, met the requirements. We can register something, we can review it, approve it, and so on. And one of our clients said, once we implement an application and push it to production, we also want to give users some more love, right? And that love is expressed in automation, right? So if we can suggest our employees some of the data, or if we can do something for them, let's do that. Let's make their life easier, right? So for instance, for this first two fields, registered by and registration date, I would like to have a default value, right? Because most of the time, if Mark opens up this form, he will be the person registered, okay? And the second thing is, if he registers today, we might suggest the current date, right? So for that, we go back to the designer, to the configuration of registered by. We have a graphical rules editor, which will be having some more fun in a moment. But for now, you can provide a simple parameter. For that field, registered by, provide me with a current username. And that's the only thing that we have to do. And in a very similar fashion, we'll proceed with the registration date. The only difference is we'll say, give me the current date. And now we can save it and verify once more. Mark is already indicating something that I missed ever so slightly. Because there's one more thing. We provide the value, right? But we don't provide the currency. So we don't know if it's 500 euros or 500 RONs or whatever else. So for that, we can also modify the value field, which is the number, and provide the suffix, and let's say we express everything in euro, so it's, let's say, universally understandable. And now we can save and see how it affected our form. You could do that. I will create we can create a list now. Let's choose a different scenario, because let's say currency will be universal, but then let's say for the statistical purpose, we want to categorize the gifts that our employees receive. So for instance, on the form, I would like to have a selectable list, drop down or autocomplete, with a category. So for that, we'll create a list that will allow users to choose from instead of typing by hand, right? So let's call this IT Congress gift categories, and let's provide some examples like electronics, like clothing, and other ones. Okay, so in essence, we are creating a data source, pull information from, to be able to enable users to select it instead of typing. And in a similar fashion, we will be using other types of data sources. So this could be SQL database, this could be your ERP system, your CRM, and so on. The whole idea is to pull existing data, give it to the end user, and let them choose. And now we, for this data source, we choose association. So we decide that this data source should be available for our gift approval application. Okay? So that's the first part. And the second part is that we need right now we need a field to use that data source. So let's call this category. And this is going to be a choice field. And then, first of all, we can decide what kind of type of choice field do we have. So it could be drop down, it could be pop up, or my favorite is autocomplete because you can just start typing it, it will already filter the list. And then we connect that field with a data source that we just created, right? So we point out to the system, hey, for this field, give me the values from that data source. Okay? So I think, and we can decide what kind of information do we display to the end user. From my personal preference, I don't give my users ID because they don't care. Although I could use ID to create some various different conditions in the background, but we don't need to show the ID to the end users. And the only thing we need to do, Mark, is just to show that field on the form. So we go to the place you already know, which is the field matrix, and you see category here. So let's make it visible in the first and read only in any other stage. And now let's see how it works. So again, save, get back, start a new thing, and you will see this category is also already here. You can see all of the values that we've created. Or if you start typing, it will be already filtered to the letters matching the records. Does it satisfy the requirement for the drop? Okay, good. One more thing I see that I could improve here is that on the first step of that process, we demand some data from the employee, right? So right now, all of those fields are not mandatory. We can go forward without filling them. For the sake of presentation, let's make just one field mandatory because I don't want to fill out this form every single time we go through it. So let's make value required. And let's see how the system will behave if we don't provide the value for it. And let's just refresh, because I just want to show that right now this red asterisk is here. And if Mark tries to submit, the system says, hey, but now I require from you to provide a value in this field. Okay, so let's provide some sample data just so we have a little bit more. And soon we'll be also having fun with reports.
What happens if you modify this obligatory field and then you already have in the database elements which are empty?
Well, then you haven't thought out everything, right? We will not prevent you from making this kind of mistakes. The system prevents from making larger mistakes, like deleting something that we already used, right? We don't want to lose data, right? In this case, we are showing and simulating a scenario where we do rapid prototyping, right? So we create as we go. In a real life scenario, you would do this application on development, put it to the test, make sure it works, then put it to the production. For that, we have a very good mechanism where you can package the whole application and just import it to the target environment, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, once you do that, you can also verify the configuration. So if you have some dead ends in your process, if you forgot about something, the system will also tell you, hey, you forgot, okay? But that's a very good question, Edward. All right. So yeah, we have this case. I think we can leave it like this, and then we can have some fun with reports.
What about the versioning of the application? Because you did the initial application and you did some steps. Normally
Yes.
it's a new version every time you
Yes.
release it. You have some documentation in the back regarding the changes and the versioning.
So first of all, every single change, and Mark, if we could go to the designer studio for just a second, we are improvising now, so this wasn't pre-prepared. Every single change that you make in this process will be recorded, right? So if you created some application and he did something to it and destroyed it, you will know, okay? So if, Mark, if you go to right click on the process, you'll be able to see the history of process. One note up, new Git approval. So like here you have history of changes, right? But then in 95% of cases, you don't really need versioning of your application. In a way that if we create many versions of the same process, we have to run them all at once, right? So there'll be some instances where you have the version 1, version 3, version 5, and so on, and you have to maintain them all. What we do is we update, right? But then, if we go through the process, dev, test, prod, it's actually quite easy to manage everything. If you need to revert changes, it's also okay, because whenever you do import, we already will create a backup of your application.
If you want to restore the repository, where is it located?
You can actually export a given state of an application and then use it also for reverting changes. So this is something you need to take care of.
Do you have like user rights or access? Manage the user access?
Yes, of course, of course. Right now we sort of do everything as an admin, but of course you can granulate the privileges to just allow people to start, to just give them read-only access, and so on and so forth. And you can dynamically change those privileges.
On the application level?
First, it's on application level, and the second thing, you can also provide privileges on the field level. So you can say, only board members can see this field, and then provide a setting for that.
And if you work with APIs, retrieving of users' data, like AP, something like that, to manage the rights, permissions, and so on, and also to manage it for the users.
Does everyone hear the question?
Not really.
Okay, so I'll be repeating the question. So can we use API to pull information about the users, right? Normally, most of the information will be existing in AD, but we can also use external sources to pull information from, not only for users, but for other things as well. All right, just we'll have some space, hopefully, for questions. Right now, let's just do reporting because I want to sort of go step by step, just that we don't skip too far. Let's create a couple of reports. First, I want a table report showing me every single Git approval that we've done up to this point, okay? So Mark is giving it a name. We select that the data we want comes from this specific process. And then you can, if you like to see only archived items, you would just tick approved or declined, right? But we want to see everything, so let's keep everything checked. And then the second thing we need to do is to define what kind of information should be visible on the report, okay? So let's say we don't need ID. I think you have to erase it like, okay, but then I want to see the name, I want to see the value, who registered it, and the category. Okay, so we just double click and it goes here. And from that perspective, you can decide on the order. So let's put give name somewhere up and some of those other information as well. All right. And let's save it and see what the result is. Okay, and that's the report. We've done 3 so far. First was empty, the second one didn't have the category, but the last one is the full one. So this is how quickly we can produce some reports for people to see. And now let's also do graphical report. So we'll actually use this one as a basis. We just turn it into the graphical report. So this is going to be a chart, and it will show the value of our gifts per specific category. All right, so Mark is doing the configuration. We'll have a bar chart showing us the value. We'll show the total per given category. You can have some fun with colors and whatever else. And then, if you look at the result, we'll switch the view to the graphical report, and this is how it's going to look like, more or less. Of course, we don't have a lot of data at this point. So now, let's also create a shortcut for the end users to quickly start this process, okay? We'll make it in the form of a tile. So for that, Mark, I think we need to go add a new one. Okay, good. I have different ways of doing that. So yeah, basically we want to give users a specific tile so they could just click and that opens the form, okay? For those that are not used to even Webcon or whatever else, you can even create the URL shortcut to put on someone's desktop. So here, basically Mark is specifying the parameters of that shortcut for creating new gift protocol workflow. And then let's say we want to create a custom dashboard for our users. So out of those elements and the other ones that we have out of the box in the system, we create a dashboard for end users. Okay, and let's put first section for 3 columns. And first of all, we have certain elements that are available in the system out of the box. Like for instance, if you scroll to the application supervisor. So first we'll know who's the owner of this application, so if it doesn't work, if there's so many problems or questions, you know who to contact to. The second thing that we have is the task counter, so you can see the summary of everything that is awaiting for your attention. And then we could provide the start tile directly in the first line. And in the second row, we could embed those reports that we've already created. By the way, I know it's hot, so bear with me. I'm with you. All right, so we embedded the graphical report, and also we can embed, we put a table, and then we can embed the graphical report. And essentially speaking, this is how you create dashboards. And then most of the time, different groups of employees have different needs, right? So we can create multiple dashboards for a given group. One for end users, the other one for financial officers, the other one for board members, and so on and so forth, just so they have the access to the data that they care about. All right, and this is the way of creating dashboard, and it already looks quite nice. All right, let me check the time. Okay, it's still good. So let's have some more fun with this application, and then let's imagine the scenario where we start using it, and so then in the company we have internal compliance department, and the compliance department says, look guys, it's great that you are registering, that's already a step forward, but now every single gift that is over 1,000 euro should go through us as well. So I'm not sure who asked for modification of the workflow, but we'll be doing that. You? Okay, perfect. So look, what we want to do is from manager approval to have an automatic verification by the system what is the value, and depending on the value we want to direct the workflow in different places. Okay? One would be additional compliance approval step. The other one would just go to approve because we'll be below the threshold. So Mark is creating the step for it's compliance, but yes, it's hot, so I, you know.
The gift might be an outline.
Yeah, so compliance approval, and then we need to have a branch. So this is where we'll insert the condition to check what is the value, if it's over the threshold or below the threshold. Okay. So from manager, the workflow will go to the verification of the value. Okay. And now from that, we could be below the threshold, so the compliance approval will not be required. So that's a no. And it could be over the threshold, so we'll call this path yes, I suppose.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the compliance can also take one of two choices, either approve it or reject it. Okay. So reject is the last path. And now we have to create the condition. And as I said, in our case, this is a low code, right? So it's like Lego for building applications. So also these kind of things we do in a graphical way. So normally you have to use some sort of scripting language to achieve this kind of a result. But here we have a set of predefined functions. Something that is most common is if something happens, then something else should happen. And then we can refer to any piece of information that we already have on the form or that the system collects. So if the value is higher or equal 1000, then the system should go with a path, and that path will be yes. So we need compliance. Else, in any other case, which is we are below the 1000, we go with a path that is called no. And this is how you create conditions in Webcon. Of course, they can be way more sophisticated, can be layered and nested one into another. But that's the general idea of bringing this level of complexity to, well, as low as we can. Mark, we need to do one more thing. We need to define who the compliance is, right? You could use, groups, roles, and so on to do the lesson. There is a question.
If the value is in different currency, how can it be calculated?
For now, we are not allowing different currencies, right? But yes, if you use different currencies at the same time, you would have to recalculate them and possibly materialize them on the form. I would say it would be good for users to see if they are over the threshold or not. We have integration with like national banks that will provide us given rates for currencies and so on, so we can provide that automatic mechanism as well. All right, so let's save and let's test if it actually works, the condition that we created. Oh yeah, one more thing, there was a requirement for email notification. So for manager to receive an email notification, we just have one checkbox to tick. And that's the only thing it takes to have good enough email notification. Once we test the process, we'll see that Mark will receive an email and we'll have a look how does it work and how does it look out of the box. So we start a new one. Let's complete this. Let's go over the threshold, okay? So put something expensive in it. There's a question.
Have internal synchronization, so emails can be sent in Romanian, for example?
Yes, I'll just repeat. Yes, you can customize the emails. So whether that's language or a template, you can do that. There is an action for that. Right now we are using just dirty and quick out-of-the-box option that just requires one tick. Okay, so TD, and let's submit. And then this goes to the manager approval. Let's approve this. And now you will see that we moved to the compliance approval step on the right-hand side of the form, and also the email notification arrived. I have 5 minutes, thank you. Okay. Can we see the notification mark? Just before you move on to the... Yeah. So this is what the checkbox give us. Just data about this process with a link. Let's go there and approve, reject, do whatever. All right. Mark, we need to show 2 things. First, I want to see mobile. Okay, just so you know, Mark moved compliance after the manager approval, just so we have the right chronological order of steps. So attention to detail is important.
We didn't define what we wanted to see on the form, right? So
Yeah, but you've seen that already, right? So you know the gist. We take checkboxes and then it's done. And maybe one more thing before you do, Mark, let's show audit trail. Because every single thing that you create in the system automatically has audit trail available. So at any point of time, you can verify who, when, did what. So the data that appears for the first time is green. If you change something, is red, and so on and so forth. And you can even verify if all of the actions were actually executed. Okay? And this took us 0 time to deliver. This is the out-of-the-box functionality. Yes? It's underneath we have Microsoft SQL Server. So whatever you can do with SQL Server, you can do with our system. We have plain data more or less here, and we actually create flat views of the data for the purpose of, let's say, Power BI if you have to have very sophisticated report. What Mark is showing is that whatever we create for the desktop is automatically available for mobile. So here, Mark is logging into our application, and it's basically a window to the system, right? So here we have our gift approval application. We can start it, and we can use all of the functionalities of mobile devices. So Mark, if you want to take a selfie or whatever, we can do it.
Selfie with the audience.
Yeah, it's a little bit shaky, but you get the idea. But it makes it easier, right? Because if I go on a business trip like today and I have some receipts, I can just take a picture and I can put it to the expense application, right? So I don't have to carry paper with me all the time. And if I lose it, nothing bad happens. And then when we open this back on the desktop, you'll see there's a picture here with some of you in it. Yes, and the last thing that we want to show is documentation, right? Most of the companies, no matter what kind of industry, when we ask them, do you provide documentation to the applications you deliver? They say, yes, sometimes, maybe, and so on and so forth. We know, because we implement the system ourselves. Despite having Eta2U as our implementation partner and many other partners, we do that ourselves. And we know that our people are also tired, we're at some point tired about writing the documentation, because let's be honest, developers, people that deliver solutions, they want to solve problems. They don't want to write documentation, right? So for that, Mark is already doing the job just so we are on time. But basically, we can create automatically the documentation from every single application that we've created. And not only it is good for the first time, but also every time you change something, your documentation can follow, right? So you can have your documentation always up to date. So if, I hope not, if he leaves the company at some point, it's going to be easy for me to take over his application. Because I see the configuration, I have the document, I can simply take over and continue the work on a given application.
Is this ID documentation or user?
We'll show
How
you.
do you?
It's both. It's both ID and for the end users. The end user part is static, but there we 1 minute. It's enough. We explain what is available on the end user side, right? What's the portal? What's the dashboard? What are the forms? What can you do with reports and so on and so forth? And then you have proper IT documentation of the application. So Mark already exported it or generated it. And here we have first 8 pages is for end users. So basically you can give it to them as an instruction, like, hey, here's your portal. Here are the dashboards. Here are the reports and what you can do with them. What is the terminology that we use? What are the fields that are used in the system? What are the privilege levels that we assigned? And then you have the proper, can you do a single page? Just zoom it in a little. Yeah. And let's just show the, yeah. And then you have the graphical diagram. If you scroll down, we define what kind of fields that we use, what are the actions that we use, what are the rules that we use, including the snapshots of them, and so on and so forth, right? So this is how quickly we can do things. We are over the time and we've done it. Thank you very much. What are the, where are the attachments? They are stored. They are stored directly in the SQL server, in SQL database. As safe as in any Microsoft SQL database. So, like, you have to also take care of Microsoft SQL Server in order for Webcon to be secure, right? You can use it on your own server. You also have our cloud. You can put it in your private Azure tenant and then so on.